Game theory, a tool for decision-making interactions. What is game theory? Game theory is the mathematical study of situations of conflict of interest. Thus, a game is any situation in which two or more players, not having identical interests, can affect the outcome. Games can be represented in either extensive form, a logical listing of the game's sequence of moves and positions, or in typical form, a listing of the player's possible strategies, together with the outcomes associated with each choice of strategy. Games can be characterized as zero-sum or non-zero-sum, cooperative or non-cooperative, or complete or incomplete information. In non-cooperative games, the emphasis is on the search for strategies that are in equilibrium or which are, in some sense, good. In cooperative games, the emphasis is on the process of bargaining and coalition formation. Finally, in games with incomplete information, learning is also of importance. Game theory is a theoretical framework for conceiving social situations among competing players. In some respects, game theory is the science of strategy, or at least the optimal decision-making of independent and competing actors in a strategic setting. Let's define a few terms commonly used in the study of game theory. Game: any set of circumstances that has a result dependent on the actions of two or more decision-makers. Players: a strategic decision-maker within the context of the game. Strategy: a complete plan of action a player will take given the set of circumstances that might arise within the game. Payoff: the payout a player receives from arriving at a particular outcome. It can be in any quantifiable form, from dollars to utility. Information set: the information available at a given point in the game. Equilibrium: the point in a game where both players have made their decisions, and an outcome is reached. Why is game theory important? Game theory can be viewed in terms of its mathematics or as a tool to model decision-makers' interaction. These entities are called players, even though their decisions are in the context of situations with real-world consequences, quite different from the entertainment that parlor games yield. Players are assumed to choose actions to maximize their expected utility. The utility resulting from a player's action cannot be determined without considering the actions chosen by other players. Thus, game theory cannot prescribe an optimal action for an individual player without also offering a way for each player to anticipate what other players would choose. In other words, game theory is concerned with specifying actions for all players, ensuring their desired actions are optimal, given the actions of other players, implying that optimality is relative. As a result, it is generally difficult to define the best outcome from the view of all players. The value of game theory, then, lies in its ability to model the interaction between players. Such a model can help explain observations involving multi-person decision-making situations and rule out specific outcomes that might not otherwise be contemplated. There is another potential use of game theory. If one of the players can go first and choose an action that he can commit to, then it is possible to come up with choices that will ensure outcomes favorable to the first player. For example, the tax code can be viewed as lawmakers' choice. Based on that, citizens and corporations choose actions given the tax code. According to game theory, the actions and choices of all the participants affect the outcome of each. And its assumed players within the game are rational and will strive to maximize their payoffs in the game. In this class of problems, given a set of conditions, we want to find the best solution or response by considering how other players in the game will respond. The information is dynamic, and so is the answer. Anytime we have a situation with two or more players that involve known payouts or quantifiable consequences, we can use game theory to help determine the most likely outcomes. The key pioneers of game theory were mathematician John von Neumann and economist Oscar Morgenstern in the 1940s. Mathematician John Nash is regarded by many as providing the first significant extension of the von Neumann and Morgenstern work. The focus of the game theory is the game, which serves as a model of an interactive situation among rational players. The key to game theory is that one player's payoff is contingent on the strategy implemented by the other player. The game identifies the player's identities, preferences, and available strategies and how these strategies affect the outcome. Depending on the model, various other requirements or assumptions may be necessary. Game theory has a wide range of applications, including psychology, evolutionary biology, war, politics, economics, and business. However, game theory is still a young and developing science despite its many advances. What is the Nash equilibrium? The theory constructs a notion of equilibrium. The players' strategies would be mutually consistent in the sense that each would be choosing their best response to the choices of the others. The equilibrium it posits should exist for such a theory to be helpful. Nash used novel mathematical techniques to prove the existence of equilibrium in a very general class of games. This paved the way for applications. Biologists have even used the notion of Nash equilibrium to formulate the idea of evolutionary stability. Here are a few examples to convey some ideas of game theory and the breadth of its scope. What is the impact on economics and business? Game theory brought about a revolution in economics by addressing crucial problems in prior mathematical economic models. For instance, neoclassical economics struggled to understand entrepreneurial anticipation and could not handle the imperfect competition. Game theory turned attention away from steady-state equilibrium toward the market process. In business, game theory is beneficial for modeling competing behaviors between economic agents. Companies often have several strategic choices that affect their ability to realize a monetary gain. For example, businesses may face dilemmas such as whether to retire existing products or develop new ones, lower prices relative to the competition, or employ new marketing strategies. In addition, economists often use game theory to understand oligopoly firm behavior. It helps predict likely outcomes when firms engage in certain behaviors, such as price fixing and collusion. An example of game theory is the prisoner's dilemma. It is the most well-known example of game theory. Consider the example of two criminals arrested for a crime. Prosecutors have no hard evidence to convict them. However, officials remove the prisoners from their solitary cells and question each one in separate chambers to gain a confession. Neither prisoner has the means to communicate with each other. If both confess, they will each receive a 5-year prison sentence. If prisoner 1 confesses, but prisoner 2 does not, prisoner 1 will get 3 years, and prisoner 2 will get 9 years. If prisoner 2 confesses, but prisoner 1 does not, prisoner 1 will get 10 years, and prisoner 2 will get 2 years. If neither confesses, each will serve 2 years in prison. The most promising strategy is not to confess. However, neither is aware of the other's strategy, and without certainty that one will not confess, both will likely confess and receive a 5-year prison sentence. The Nash equilibrium suggests that in a prisoner's dilemma, both players will make the move that is best for them individually but worse for them collectively. Another example of game theory is the volunteer's dilemma. In a volunteer's dilemma, someone must undertake a chore or job for the common good. However, the worst possible outcome is realized if nobody volunteers. For example, consider a company where accounting fraud is rampant, though top management is unaware of it. Some junior employees in the accounting department are aware of the scam but hesitate to tell top management because it would result in the employees involved in the fraud being fired and most likely prosecuted. Being labeled as a whistleblower may also have some repercussions down the line. But if nobody volunteers, the large-scale fraud may result in the company's eventual bankruptcy and the loss of everyone's jobs. Game theory and information economics have given us valuable insights into these issues. But, of course, we do not have perfect solutions. Like many economic models, the game theory also contains a set of strict assumptions that must hold for the approach to make good predictions in practice.